Hey guys, Noah here, and I have a quick Devo for you on Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 through 6. So with that, let's go ahead and get into the passage. I, therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you to walk worthy of the calling with which you were called, with all lowliness and gentleness, with long suffering, bearing with one another in love. So to understand this passage, we need to understand two specific words, and they are the words walk and worthy. Now, the word walk does not actually refer to a physical walk. This Bible passage is not calling us to do some fancy walks when we go to church on Sunday or when we're witnessing or anything like that. Instead, it's referring to our daily walk, the choices we make, our lives. We all make choices and have thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that describe our lives and also kind of determine how we live our lives. So walk means to live, essentially, and the word worthy applies to how we live, walking worthy. Worthy can be described as highly esteemed, important, valuable, or morally upstanding. There's a lot of different ways worth can be defined and understood. In the Marvel movie, Thor, we saw how humility and love were the two key character qualities that Thor had to learn to make him worthy of his hammer and being Thor. But before we get too lost, let's put the words back into the context. Walk worthy, that phrase in verse 1. So it says, walk worthy of the calling with which you were called. Walk worthy of what calling? To understand the next part of this passage, walk worthy of the calling with which you were called. What is that calling? Why is it important? And why should we care about it? Well, this passage is actually referring to salvation. That word called, calling, salvation. The act of Jesus dying on the cross to forgive us of our sin and redeem us. None of us will ever figure out the perfect formula to walking a worthy life, a truly good life. It's actually impossible for us. I've tried. But God had a plan, and he called us through salvation, and we have an opportunity to answer. I answered that calling because I was lost. I recognized I was a sinner, and Jesus threw me a lifeline to give me a second chance. So because I'm saved, I have this call to walk worthy of my salvation. Guys, by understanding who we are as Christians is the foundation of walking worthy. By understanding how much God did for us, we should naturally want to serve and obey him out of gratitude. And so don't misinterpret this idea. We don't walk worthy so that God will love us. We walk worthy because he does love us. He presented salvation for us. He's giving us an opportunity. So how can we tell if we're actually walking worthy, if we're saved? What does that look like? How do we do it? What should we be doing? Is it something that we do? Is it something that God does? How does that work? Well, verses 2 and 3 talk about the clear signs seen in a person's life when they are truly following God and walking worthy. Let's read those verses. Verses 2 and 3. With all lowliness and gentleness, with long suffering, bearing with one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. We walk worthy by expressing humility, gentleness, patience, and loving others in both the good and the bad times. There are these virtues that are naturally produced by walking worthy. And verse 3 brings up this idea of keeping the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. So by maintaining a humble, forgiving attitude towards others, we naturally fulfill this gift of the unity of the Spirit. And the passage sort of switches gears into sharing how all Christians are called to walk worthy and recognize all of our commonalities in salvation that unify us. In verse 4, it says, there is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called in one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all, through all, and in you all. Imagine a church where everybody is constantly judging everyone and people are being kicked out of the church. All the pastors are mean. All the leadership is mean. Nobody's walking worthy. Is that a unified situation? Not at all. In the context of a good, healthy church where people are humble, gentle, patient, and loving, unity comes naturally. But how are they able to do that? How are they able to walk worthy? And the question becomes, do we see these fruits in our life? And we need to seriously consider that. Are we keeping unity and walking worthy of our salvation? As believers, we are called to recognize and keep that unity. And this is not something we can just create. This is not just, hey, I'm a good person, so I'm going to do this. It always starts with Jesus. The motivation and the natural response in order to live your life this way by walking worthy starts with that understanding of salvation, the understanding of your calling, what Jesus did for you on the cross. And that really changes our attitude. It allows us to really evaluate our choices and what we're doing, because that idea, that concept of recognizing what salvation is, it is freeing. It takes you away from every chain and every weight the world could ever throw on you guys. And so my challenge is, as we go and as we look at this passage, think about salvation throughout your day. We talk about salvation so much in the context of a Bible study, and it's usually a main point hit every single time, but that's because it is so vital to our living in this place, this world of sin. And think about the blessing of salvation. So that's my challenge. Think about that and allow it to change you guys. Allow it to forge that idea of walking worthy in every choice and every word that you guys say. So with that, I want to thank you guys for listening. Comment below if you have any thoughts or anything that really spoke to you, and have a good day.